Miss Ellen? The woman nods. She looks so like Wyan, it's almost creepy, Gakushu thinks. Although he knows he has no room to talk, what with his similar looks to his devil of a father and a certain E-class student. These are for you. I know we haven't met before, so please excuse me for my intrusion. Wyan said I'd be able to meet you today. He stops, lets her take in what he said, then continues. Of course, I don't mean to impose. No, please, come in. Gakushu smiles fondly and follows the woman in, thus stopping in the doorway and hearing the lack of footsteps that fail to follow him. He turns to find Wyan looking at him through crestfallen eyes, but he ignores it, looking as uninterested in this as he is when speaking with a stuffed animal, turns his head to the side and lifts up one hand. This is why you agreed, isn't it? You should be thanking me right now. He walks in and finds Wyan's mom speaking rapidly with a man, presumably her father. Already on a first-name basis, he's a real looker too. He must have good grades. Gakushu normally wouldn't, but on this once-in-a-lifetime special occasion, grins and offers the praise. Oh, what was your name again? Asano Gakushu. Gakushu stands nimbly by, unable to feel anything less than anxious. Right, well, please do sit down. The man motions toward the table, and Gakushu, pleasantly, takes the seat beside him. He watches Wyan's mom disappear to the back somewhere, then reappears in a few seconds with a vase for the flowers he'd given her. Wyan appears a bit later, her composure seemingly unlifted. He admires her confidence for a moment, and when she sits beside him, he feels how his heartbeat picks up and how he acknowledges the closeness of her presence. He frowns at himself, wondering just what kind of disease he's been plagued with. So Asano, how do you know our Wyan? The man asks. We're neighbors. Wyan speaks for him, cutting Gakushu a side look that clearly told him to let her do the talking. He shrugged and decided to oblige her. This was his part of the deal. He couldn't really complain, nor did he really care to, or that's what he'd like himself to believe. Really? Oh, well, that's why I thought you were familiar. Wyan's dad smiles widely. Then, what is your relationship? Gakushu noticed the way Wyan's eyes widened, cheeks flushed. He grinned at the small act, but did not speak. Well, you see, he's, Wyan spared a glance at Gakushu, but just a glance. She lowered her head and mumbled something. He couldn't help himself. He was just a tad bit curious. A little curiosity never hurt anyone, did it? Well, anyone but the cat. But Gakushu wasn't a cat. He was Gakushu, Asano Gakushu, and he'd pry if he bloody well pleased. He leaned his head into the conversation and said, Wyan is my girlfriend. We were keeping it a secret, but she thought we should come out about it now. At least that sounded believable. He patted himself on the back for it and watched Wyan malfunction under his stare. Her face was definitely the color of a midsummer night's sky. He took a little pride in knowing that, but for whatever reason, couldn't wrap his head around why. We met last summer, he was saying, a perfectly shaped lie forming in his head right as he was speaking it. We traded numbers and began chatting, then he trailed off, knowing they would be able to come up with the conclusion on their own. Wyan, why didn't you tell us? Her mom scolded. Gakushu found it kind of cute. Stop. What was he thinking? Cute? More like embarrassing. That's why he was trying to keep himself from smiling right now. Yep. Because, Wyan whined, I didn't think it was necessary. Gakushu couldn't tell if it was the lighting or what she was saying that darkened her face, but he'd like to think it was the cause of her reaction. And here we thought you needed to focus on things other than studying when you were hiding an entire human from us. Her mom grinned at Wyan. Then her beaming eyes turned to Gakushu. I'm happy to finally meet you. You can call me Emin. Well then, please, call me Gakushu. Of course, and this is my husband, Effin. Pleasure. Effin extended his hand in Gakushu's direction. It's all mine. Gakushu smiled, raising his hand to meet Effin's in the middle. Right then, let's eat. Gakushu cast a glance at Wyan and smiled at her when she caught his gaze. Maybe, he thought, she's not so bad. Gakushu motioned for her to come closer, and she all but seemed happy to do so. You really are something, you know that? She straightened her back and moved like a doll after. She pinned him with her eyes, making Gakushu feel seen, not watched or admired or picked apart, like he was about to be patronized by his father. Something shot an arrow through his heart, or, again, he thought, a bullet. What do you mean by that? Her eyes seemed to ask, but he had no intention of answering them, nor her, because why not let her think about it a little? His amusement showed, and he did nothing to hide it. Gakushu, we really would love to meet your parents. Would they be okay with that? Gakushu's eyes widened. He became in some sort of state of panic. He didn't think this far ahead. How would his father react when he found out this is what Gakushu had been getting up to in his spare time and not studying? He'd be mortified, might even disown Gakushu. He knew kids shouldn't think like that, but Gakushu wasn't just a kid. He was a protege, and a protege is supposed to reflect, imitate their master. If Gakushu fucked everything to keep the girl population at bay, he wouldn't win. He'd lose with a capital L. I'll ask them about it, of course. I'll have to tell them about Wyan first. I don't know how that'll go. Sweat dripped down his forehead and piled up behind his neck. Oh, that would be wonderful. I'm sure they'll adore her just as you do. Wyan's mom seemed really enthusiastic about this entire situation. It made Gakushu wonder if Wyan's complaints were just as bad as she made them seem. I'm done, Gakushu? Wyan pulled Gakushu from his thoughts. Huh? Oh, yeah, thank you. He bowed, then let Wyan drag his sleeve toward the living room. I'm going to kill you. She glared. Whatever for? He feigned ignorance and reveled in the fact that it pissed her off so much. He liked her face when it did that. What was the word for it? Scrunch? Yes, he liked it when her nose scrunched up. It made her look like a cute little puppy. No! There he went again. He needed to stop doing this, or he'd have worse things to worry about than his father disowning him. Wyan's frown turned into a grin. Fine, we'll see what happens. When what happens? He was teasing, but he couldn't help it. Not when her hand was still gripped on his sleeve. Oh yes, don't think he didn't, because he did, in fact, take notice of that little action. I'm sure you'll figure out soon, Wyan. She ushered him out the front door. It's getting late. Your parents are probably wondering where you've gone off to, Wyan. His voice was warning, but her eyes were daring him to say something more. He did not, and retreated outside and up to his driveway. He felt her eyes on him the whole time, and for the first time, he didn't completely hate the mere thought of being in the presence of anyone other than himself. The thought made him a little sick, but content all the same.